The imperial guard burst into the abandoned villa's cellar. Torches raised, swords drawn. There, huddled in a corner, clutching a small vial with trembling fingers, was not a traitor or political dissident. It was a boy, barely 20. Sporus, once hailed as Rome's empress, and now poised to end his own life rather than face what awaited him in the coliseum. To understand why death felt like mercy, we need to rewind 3 years. Back to the moment a grieving, half-mad emperor first laid eyes on a teenage boy who bore an uncanny resemblance to his dead wife. What followed wasn't just another tale of Roman debauchery. It was the most chilling case of identity theft in recorded history, where the victim didn't lose money or name, but their very existence. And the most horrifying part, every word you're about to hear is sourced from Roman records. Rome, 65 AD. The empire trembled as word spread. Emperor Nero, the most powerful man in the world, had murdered his pregnant wife, Poppaea Sabina, not on the battlefield or by decree, but with his own hands in the privacy of their chambers. Some sources claim it was a single brutal kick to her stomach. Others tell of a beating so vicious that she collapsed, bleeding across the marble floor. Physicians were summoned, but even their desperate efforts couldn't save her or her unborn child. Nero's grief was immediate, but not entirely human. Poppaea wasn't just a consort. She was Nero's obsession, a woman of ethereal beauty, golden hair that shimmered in sunlight, skin like polished ivory, and enormous, luminescent eyes that poets likened to Venus herself. Her death wasn't just loss, it was a challenge to Nero's godlike delusions. And so began the descent. He refused cremation. Her body was embalmed in spices worth a fortune, placed in a crystal sarcophagus and kept close, so he could still see her. Servants whispered of nights when Nero dined with her corpse, speaking to it, asking for political advice, laughing at memories only he could recall. His palace became a shrine, her chambers untouched, her scent recreated, her memory weaponized. Weeks passed. Nero's hallucinations intensified. He began seeing Poppaea everywhere, in servant girls, in noble women, in prostitutes on the street. He would stop mid-sentence, mid-speech, even mid-performance, just to grab a woman's face, studying it with desperate eyes. Artists were summoned to capture Poppaea's essence. They failed. Always. Nero screamed, wept, punished, until one day, in the dull monotony of court duties, fate delivered a mirror. A young boy, a freedman, 15 at most, ambushed by the emperor's gaze, and in that gaze, recognition. The same eyes, the same tilt of the head, the same flash of amber in the iris. Sporus. Time froze. Nero stood. Scrolls fell. The court watched as the emperor circled the boy like a lion inspecting prey. But there was no anger, only awe. And with trembling reverence he whispered, "What is your name?" "Sporus," the boy answered. Sporus was no ordinary servant. Born into the palace, orphaned young, and educated with the children of court officials, he was bright, gentle, and ambitious, but none of that mattered now. That day, he ceased to be. Nero brought him into his private chambers, not to seduce him, but to study him. Artists and physicians were summoned again, sketches made, measurements taken, mannerisms catalogued. Nero, mad with grief, plotted the unthinkable. He wouldn't just replace Poppaea, he would resurrect her by reconstructing this boy in her image. The transformation began subtly. Clothing changed. Speech was trained. Cosmetics were applied. He was forbidden to speak his own name. Servants were told to call him Lady. Mirrors became cruel teachers, each day reflecting less of who Sporus once was. But the worst came with the surgery. Nero didn't hide his plan. He was giddy, euphoric. "Tomorrow," he told Sporus, placing Poppaea's emerald ring on his finger, "you'll become who you were always meant to be." The next day, the surgery began. Roman medicine had no anesthesia. The operation went far beyond castration. It was an attempt to mold a body, forcefully, violently, into a feminine form. The screams echoed through the palace. One servant claimed you could hear them from 3 wings away. Recovery was slow. Infection loomed. Pain was constant. Nero stayed by his side, not as a lover, but as an artist obsessed with his masterpiece. He adjusted the bandages himself, whispered stories of Poppaea, read her favorite poetry, told Sporus again and again that he was her now, and Sporus, barely alive, nodded through the haze of poppy extract, knowing resistance meant death. The physical torture was only the beginning. Sporus was trained to walk, speak, and move like Poppaea. His wardrobe was a perfect replica, her perfumes recreated, her childhood memorized. He learned how she laughed, how she reclined, how she held a wine goblet, how she whispered in the emperor's ear. 6 months later, the illusion was unveiled. A private dinner. Sporus, dressed in Poppaea's purple gown, entered. Conversation died. Gasps echoed. For a moment, even seasoned courtiers forgot the truth. Nero beamed with pride. He called her Sabina, introduced her as his wife. The charade had begun. In 67 AD, Nero did the unthinkable. He married Sporus, a full imperial wedding. Priests, dowry, rituals, garlands, everything a Roman bride would receive. Sporus, now legally Sabina, wore the saffron veil of a Roman bride. The wedding feast was legendary. Peacocks stuffed with doves, musicians, poets, senators giving speeches. Gifts flooded in, jewels, amulets, and, chillingly, fertility charms. Sporus played the role, flawlessly, but beneath the jewelry, the cosmetics, and the rehearsed smiles, the boy who once bore the name Sporus was fading, replaced by a living ghost. Life as the Empress wasn't glamorous. It was theater. Every day was a script. Sporus ate, walked, prayed, and mourned as Poppaea. At ceremonies, festivals, races, and theater performances, he sat by Nero's side as Augusta. During Nero's grand tour of Greece, Sporus participated in rituals meant for wives of emperors. Priests prayed for children. He offered incense to the gods. But in the quiet of the gardens, servants found him standing still at dawn, like a statue. frozen between what he was and what he was forced to become. Historians believe Sporus began to fragment. His mind, unable to endure the strain, collapsed inward. He began calling himself Poppaea, even when Nero wasn't near. He spoke to mirrors, held conversations in two voices, his own and hers. He had become her because it was the only way to survive. And then, in spring of 68 AD, Nero's empire collapsed. The Senate declared him a traitor. The Praetorian Guard abandoned him. As Nero fled Rome, Sporus, his creation, his obsession, followed. In their final days, Nero wept in Sporus's lap, begging to die together like tragic lovers of old. When the soldiers closed in, Nero pressed a dagger to his throat. Sporus helped guide it in. Perhaps that was his only act of mercy. Nero was gone. But Sporus's nightmare wasn't over. He became a relic, a spoil of war, passed between the generals who vied for Rome's throne. Galba kept him as a curiosity. Otho, Poppaea's former husband, reportedly offered to marry him, as revenge or fantasy. Vitellius, the cruelest of all, had darker plans. He announced that Sporus would perform in the Coliseum, not as an honored guest, but as the main act. The myth of Proserpina would be recreated. He would be raped and killed on stage before Faust. When Sporus heard this, he made a choice, the only one left. He took his own life. Some say he drank poison. Others say he opened his veins like a Roman noble. Whatever the method, it was his decision. He was 20 years old. The story of Sporus isn't just about Nero's madness. It's about what happens when society enables it. The physicians, the artists, the priests, the politicians, the servants. They all played a part in erasing a person to serve a fantasy. We don't even know his real name. Sporus may have been a cruel joke, derived from sporos, meaning seed, an ironic title for a boy who'd been sterilized, hollowed, and remade. He became a ghost in life, a shadow of someone else, a performance trapped in flesh. But in death he claimed one thing back, his agency. Let us not forget him, not just as a victim of tyranny, but as a human being, who endured the unimaginable, and in the end chose dignity over degradation. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. What does Sporus's tragedy tell us about power, identity, and the cost of survival? And if you want to uncover more forgotten chapters of human history, subscribe now. This is the Drowsy Histories, where history whispers truths too dark for textbooks.